Hi, everyone. So excited to be here today. I'm Lindsey Crouse. I'm a reporter, a writer, a producer for the New York Times, where I often focus on looking at gender and power through the lens of sport. And so I'm so excited to speak with the legendary Dawn Staley. Who is an expert, obviously, on what it takes to drive gender equity in sport, because she's lived it. So let's get started. All right, so Dawn, this past month, you became the first Black coach, male or female, to win more than one Division I college basketball championship. So just tell us a little bit about this accomplishment and what it took to get here.
Well, I actually didn't know that I was part of history by winning two. I really just didn't do the research on how many Black coaches won national championships. Carolyn Peck, who was the first Black woman to win a national championship, was pretty much my guide. I have to give a story because 2 years before we won our first national championship in 2017, she shared with me a piece of her net from the 1999 national championship team. And she told me, she was like, I'm doing for you what somebody did for me because I know you're close. And the only thing I ask of you is to, once you win, is to share your piece of the net with someone else. And then, after we won, I tried to get in conversation with her to help me pick who that next coach would be. And we couldn't figure out who that next coach would be. So we ended up sharing it with all of, we cut this net up. We shared it with all of the female Black coaches in Division I. Wow. And I just thought that was a narrative that should happen in our sport because there's so many female Black young coaches that don't get an opportunity to be head coaches. And I know probably not all of them will win a national championship, but a national championship is coaching the first generation college player. That counts as a national championship. Or, those down days in which you don't feel like you can do it. We've all been there before, and sometimes a little tangible piece of nylon will help you get through the day, because it really helped me during the 2 years that I held Carolyn Peck's piece of nylon hostage until we were able to win a national championship. But it's really a cool thing because our championship teams, both in 2017 and 2022, we look like, and we probably act like, the mass of women's basketball programs. Like we didn't look, we look very much like, the mass of women's basketball, and that means that if we can do it, we lend hope to everybody else to know that they can do it.
Amazing. I want to talk about the barriers to being a woman and a Black woman in coaching in a minute, but for a second, I just want to go back to a little bit about your career. So you obviously, before you became a coach, you were a remarkable player yourself. And I'm just a little curious, what surprised you making that transition from playing to coaching, and what were the challenges?
I mean, what surprised me, one is I never wanted to be a coach. That's number one. I didn't see myself being responsible for 18 to 22-year-olds, and I got into coaching when I was 30 years old. So I was much younger than my players' parents. So I just didn't see myself being responsible for them. But somebody saw something in me that I did not see in myself, and I always credit him. He's since passed away. It was the athletic director at Temple University, Dave O'Brien. He asked me a few times through somebody else if I had any interest in coaching, and I told him no. And then he asked me to come in to speak with him because I was in town. I'm from Philadelphia. I grew up going on the campus of Temple University, so I knew, where Temple was. So when I went in, he asked me two questions. He said, "Can you lead?" And I'm looking like, I'm a point guard. I'm usually the captain of each team that I played on, and you're asking me if I can lead. That's my bubble talk. That's not me saying that out loud. And I was 30 years old. I'm over 50 now. I'll probably say it now. So that's what I've learned. I've learned that. And then the second thing he asked me, he said, can you turn our women's basketball program around? And that was kind of the aha moment for me, like he was challenging me, and I'm drawn to challenges. And once he said that, I didn't immediately say yes, and I got to continue the story because he tricked me. So, we finished up our conversation, and he's like, can you walk down the hall and meet some other people? And I'm like, sure. So I walk down this hall, we go in this conference room, he sits me at the head of the conference table, and there are like 10 or 12 people sitting around this conference table. These are the people who are going to decide who the next coach is. I didn't know what an interview was because I just played basketball. The only thing I did, so this was an interview that he did not tell me about. But they're asking me questions like, what do you see yourself doing in 5 years? I said, playing in the WNBA. And they were asking me all these questions like, like I really needed a job. And I'm like, I got a job. I don't really need a job. But 2 weeks later, I took the job, and it's been the most gratifying, life-altering job. I don't even consider it a job, but it's just what I'm supposed to be doing. And I just consider myself a dream merchant for young people because in basketball, I've been able to check off everything that any player or coach will have wanted to do in a career. I've done it, and I've chosen basketball first through a lot of things, and basketball is strangely repaying me for choosing it first. And so that's a pretty cool, transition into being a player to a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think, like you said, some of the best jobs out there are the ones you're not looking for, right? So I do want to transition to coaching generally. And so there's currently 6 women coaches among the WNBA's 12 teams. And one of them, Sandy Brondello, has said, we're all coaches. We're not female coaches. We're not male coaches. We're coaches. Can you just talk a little bit about the sentiment there and what she's getting at and the extent to which you agree with that?
Well, I think, Sandy, in a perfect world, we are all coaches, but we don't live in a perfect world, and women don't get opportunities that men get in our game.
Yep.
Finally, we're moving into a territory where women are getting most of the openings that we have in our game. If we're just all coaches, why aren't there more female coaches, head coaches, in other sports or in the NBA?
Yep.
So I think basketball is basketball. I don't think coaches are just coaches, or we're not seen as that in our profession. And until we're able to, really say that with the statistics behind that, I think we moved the chain further than it's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to continue there. I mean, at the same time, women coaches especially speak out frequently about leaving their positions because of barriers that are there, whether it's the schedule, the travel, the hours. And only 42% of D1 head coaches are women right now. And so could you just speak a little bit about how coaching could be friendlier to women, and how have you navigated those obstacles in your own life?
One of the 42% has got to increase.
Yes.
That's being more friendly to women. I mean, we are coaching young women, and I truly believe that there's a space for men to be in our game, but also know that to navigate through life as a woman, the best place to start is with a female coach, a woman. And that's not, I'm not male bashing. I'm not, because some male coaches have given their entire lives to our game, and there's a place for them. But when we're talking about coaching young females, we need to see those. We need to see females as head coaches, because there are a lot of female assistant coaches out there, and they've, they're probably gonna be career assistant coaches, which is sad, but I do feel like women should be coaching women at a much higher rate. We need to double that 42% up to 84%, and that is being friendly. I think when we are the bosses, when we are the head coaches, we can navigate how we want to navigate for the game to be friendly to us. We can have that work-life balance that's needed, because if it's always men making those decisions, they decide what's right and wrong, and we know that we can do all things as women. We are the pillars of when you allow us to be. When you make the decision of having a woman a part of your company, your franchise, you bring in a different perspective that that will allow that franchise or that program to grow.
Absolutely, and obviously you're a testament to that, right? In winning yourself. I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the field of women's sports broadly, and particularly, so obviously in June it's going to be the 50th anniversary of Title IX, the bill that put women in sports, generally in schools. And so that was a watershed in the history of girls' sports, and it transformed the U.S. into the biggest incubator of female athletic talent in the world, an amazing accomplishment. But in some ways, it kind of strikes me as a Pyrrhic victory, because there's so much more to be done. But we have Title IX, so I think people get very excited about how the work is done. That's obviously not true. Women's sports are still derivative of men's sports in so many ways. And so I've been thinking about what we should do moving forward, and I'm so curious to get your thoughts on this. I mean, what would it take to reimagine women's sports from a female-first perspective? What changes do you think we would see if we did that?
Changes. Well, I think first of all, we need more women in positions of decision making. Mm-hmm. That's one. So that's presidents, that's ADs. Those are the people that make decisions in our sport. And if you only know it from a male perspective, you're just going to go by what's already exists. But what can happen is, I think when you think about women and what we've been able to do, and I'm just going to speak specifically from my experience in the game. I just finished my 22-year coaching, in coaching, and what's driven my career is we're in a position of getting people emotionally attached to us.
Yes,
that is our pull on everything that we touch, is to get not emotional in the sense of crying, and emotional in that you want to be a part of something that we're doing because we do it the right way. We include everyone in it. It's just like, we're paying it forward, and we're positioning ourselves to have everyone feel like they're a part of it. So I would start there. Mm-hmm. Like, what we do at the University of South Carolina and the fan base that we've created is we've made them feel a part of our program. That is taking the time and bringing them to our office. Come on, we got an open house. Come see how we do things. And that has in turn to we've been number one in attendance for the past 8 years. Like, how do we do that at South Carolina? How do we become, the capital of women's basketball? Is we mommed and popped it, to be quite honest. Because there isn't a whole lot of marketing money in women's basketball. They say the lines are equal, but they're not, because I see what they do for the men's program that we don't do. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be equal, it just has to be equitable. What's right for them is right for them. What's right for us is right for us. So I just feel like we have to put the emotion behind it, mm-hmm. In a sense of having people wanting to be a part of it.
Yeah, and that's what you call your fams, right?
Our fams.
You're the number one attendance of any of any basketball team in the league in South Carolina, as you said. And I'm curious, was that a calculated approach on your part, or was it just sort of natural, your intuition, or what was the thinking there?
Well, when I first got to South Carolina, I just wanted to pretty much hit the ground running and create a national powerhouse. And I didn't know what that looked like outside of our office and recruiting and your normal stuff. And then our fans started just coming in droves. Part of it was a marketing campaign. Our marketing director came up with this, was pretty cool. It was called the Drive for 5. At that time, I was, my Olympic number is number 5. So, he came up with something that was pretty cool, the Drive for 5,000 season ticket holders. And we smashed it. Like, we got well over that, which was cool. And then from there, I'm like, we got something here. We have to give them access. People want access to our program, access to myself. So I just put myself out there, put our team out there, put our coaches out there, put everybody out there, and magically we average about 12 to 13,000 fans each game, and that is unheard of.
Yeah.
In women's basketball, if you're not one of the top tiers, like you always hear about the UConns, you always hear about the Tennessees, but you never heard anything, at South Carolina as us being, a ticket that people would pay, to see. I can remember probably 7 to 8 years ago, they came to me and they said, we want to sell our women's basketball tickets for $1. So I'm just like, huh? And I said no. I said no. We're not going to cheapen our product. I just felt like that's when I took the initiative to say, I'm in the challenges. I had to prove them wrong that you're not going to cheapen our product by charging $1 for to come into our games. And then from there, we just blew it out of the water. We just mommed and popped it. We just, we made ourselves accessible to our fans, and, in return, they made us look like what a national championship team should look like prior to us ever winning a national championship. Mm-hmm. But you gotta look the part, and you gotta feel the part, and you gotta create a home court advantage, and that's what we did.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in some ways you are the exception to a truism that happens a lot in women's sports, which is that they're often there for inspiration, but they're not looked at as investment opportunities. And you've shown that inspiration can lead to those investment opportunities. Do you think that model is scalable? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're always, women's basketball and other Olympic sports or women's sports, we're always looked at as non-revenue producing.
Yes.
That's the big thing.
The JV to men's varsity.
Yes. So, and I have a podcast, and I got a chance to speak to an AD. Her name is Carla Williams. She's the AD at the University of Virginia, my alma mater. And she said this, which was pretty powerful, but just very simple. She was like, you are revenue producing. You get 12,000 to 13,000 people in the stands. She said that is revenue producing. You're winning. That's revenue producing. People want to go to the University of South Carolina because of you're on TV, you win national championships. So that's revenue producing, and because of that, consider yourself that. And we sometimes, like other women's basketball programs, don't get 12 to 13,000 people in. So that means concessions open up, right? Mm-hmm. We are revenue producing. We're getting money for season ticket holders, so we are revenue producing. And if you can see that and invest in something like that, we could have been at this place 14 years ago.
Yes.
And the investment isn't just paying the head women's basketball coach, because sometimes they think that's investing. No, investing is investing in the program. Like give us some chartered flights, like other people, chartered flights, young people like stuff. They like laptops, they like iPads. You know, that is a part of creating an experience because you never know, you know, who they're gonna grow up to be.
Yep.
And they're gonna give back because of the experience, the emotional attachment they associate with the experiences they have as college athletes.
Yep. Yeah, you get back what you put in. So, I mean, compared to last March Madness, right? There has been a change. There has been improved investment because players spoke up. They advocated for themselves, and people listened to them and pushed for change in the audience as well. And I'm curious, I mean, if you could talk a little bit about that generally, but also when you watch those changes happen, do you get excited, or do you kind of just say, finally, like too little, too late, et cetera? Where do you stand on that?
You know, the inequity piece. Last year at the women's Final Four, we were all in San Antonio, and then the men's Final Four, they were all in Indianapolis, and somehow a picture of the weight room at the men's tournament, you know, was seen and on social media, and then young people. One of the young ladies at our tournament took a picture of what our weight room looked like, and it was a stark difference. And she posted it, and it went viral, and it was a big uproar. So we, as coaches, we all spoke out on it, and there was an immediate change from last year to this year. Like the signage, you know, all of the branding, we were able to use the March Madness branding, and it felt a lot different than it did last year. And those actions took place quite quickly.
Yes. This was the first year
Right.
that women were able to have the title March Madness as
Right.
well. Before that, only men did.
Right. So it felt different, you know, and it's a great start. But it's if you're a male, right? If you're the president of the NCAA, you only think one way. Like this is the way it's worked. But since then, there was an investigation, and the
Yes.
investigation unveiled that, you know, this has been going on for years. Like the men's tournament makes buku money, like billions.
Yes.
Billions. And then all the other tournaments, women's basketball, tennis, softball, we're all in one bunch, right? Just one. It's men's basketball, then everybody, all the other championships. And ESPN pays a lot of money for all of those championships. And then those championships probably take up that money, and then the NCAA probably has to pay a little bit more. So that goes to show that we're not revenue producing, like, you know. But if we're able to stand on our own, meaning women's basketball, and have our own tournament, and create sponsorship packages for our tournament, and create TV packages for women's basketball, I do think we can. I don't know if we'll make billions right now, but neither did men's basketball when they started off. They didn't. But we can get there. We can get there, but we have to get people in the room that are brave enough to make women's basketball its own entity.
It gets back to that idea of what would it take to reimagine women's sports as a women's first model instead of, again, just kind of tacked onto men's sports, which it so often is. I was talking to Imani McGee-Stafford, another top women's basketball player, and she said it's like, she told me it's like trying to open a package of scissors that you need scissors to open, which I thought was, I mean, it really stuck with me. It was like, how do you get people to invest in your sport so that you can show that it's profitable, that it'll bring in revenue? And can you just talk a little bit more about that? I mean, what is holding back these broadcast opportunities that you so obviously deserve?
And they're gonna get mad at me, but I don't really care. It's ESPN. They don't have competition.
Yeah.
So we have to create competition, and I'm sure that ESPN probably, when it's all said and done, will probably be the station to broadcast it. But you know, if they have a little competition from, I don't know, CBS, BET, somebody.
Yep.
Somebody. Like the NCAA men's tournament was played on TBS, right? So, and then some of their games are played on CBS. there was, so Turner won the bidding war. It's the same thing. It's the same platform that you have to see our game, but we get locked into these bad deals, and then we're forced to stay in them for years and years and years, and then you don't hear about who the competition is because we just sign off on, okay, let's just create another deal. But I think now we're at a place where people will listen now. I think our product that we put on the floor is such a great product that I know there will be competition for ESPN to just give us a little bit more.
Yep.
Or a lot more.
And yes, thank you. And just because this is a conference, again, about power, and money is so much a part of power, whether we like it or not. One thing that's really struck me about watching women's basketball players in college, since the name, image, likeness rules were passed, where women can now, men and any college athlete can profit off their own, basically off their social feeds, anything they put online around their name, they can profit off of now. And what really struck me around the NCAA was that a lot of women's college basketball players were beating men's college basketball players in terms of the money that they're bringing in. In the final game, in the final four, I think 3 of the top earning athletes were women, and 1 was a man. That really struck me as fascinating. I'm curious if this inspiration business that you're talking about, that you're excelling in, is it almost serving as an uncanny advantage for women? Is this a good thing? What do you think is at play there?
I think now is the time in which women are, having these platforms that they're seen as revenue producing young people. And that's just a small sample of what the big sample should be, which is our entire game. If you can look at, Paige Becker, she's one of them. She's probably the highest in college women's basketball. One of our players, Zaya Cook, is on that top 10 list. Probably Aaliyah Boston is going to be on that list. She's a national player of the year, defensive player of the year, just signed with Under Armour. So now is the time. I think our AD just told me the other day that our team, women's basketball, it makes up over 40% of all the NIL deals on campus. That's the ones that's on record.
That's incredible.
There are other deals that's happening that aren't being reported on campus. So it's now is the time. Like it's an incredible thing that these young athletes can benefit from their name, image, and likeness. And it's, again, a small sample of what's to come in our sport. I think our sport is at a place where if you get in now, like if you want to invest in now, I think it will be a great generational changing investment for some individuals or some companies.
Yep. I know we only have a few minutes left, so I just want to talk about kind of storytelling and how we talk about these amazing players and what you think is lacking there. I just produced a documentary about Lucia Harris, a short documentary about Lucia Harris, who was daughter of sharecroppers, took her very small Mississippi team to 3 NCAA championships, was the first woman to score a basket in the Olympics, was actually recruited by the NBA because there was no WNBA at the time. And she said no, because she didn't want to play against men. But then her story was all but lost to history in many ways, and until we resuscitated it. And then it went on again to win the Oscar, which was a huge deal. We were so excited about that. To me, it was a proof of concept about how we need to be telling more of these stories. But I mean, you're in the driver's seat here in terms of making the stories. What from your perspective needs to change or expand, et cetera, about how we are talking about these female athletes right now, and how can we do that better?
Yeah, it is the decision makers of our game. I'm gonna put a lot of this on ESPN because they are the
fine
people,
with that.
Yeah, they're the people who tell the stories. We for the longest they've created like a narrative. No matter what's happening in our game, they stick with the one and only narrative that they started with in the season, and it oftentimes you have to pivot. Like everybody in their careers have to pivot in some way. to make their situation better. We got, a teammate of mine, Teresa Edwards, 5-time Olympian, 4-time gold medalist, 1-time bronze medalist. We have yet to hear her story.
Yes.
And she has to tell her own story for her story to be heard. Go get her audiobook. You'll love it. But it is that where are the story, where are the decision makers that will tell the story of the history of our game? It is rich. It's a rich history of women who have come before me that have done some incredible things that I'm standing on their shoulders, and I'm able to do what I do and be successful because of the hard work and the labor they put into our sport.
Yeah, I mean, it also, as you're talking about kind of gatekeepers, decision makers, storytellers, I will point out that on that film, Shaquille O'Neal and Steph Curry both stood up, and they both really lent their voice and their platform to it. And I'm curious what you think about kind of the role of men in this before I switch to our last question.
I mean, they have the voices. Like the NBA players, they have the voices of our game. It's a shame that we have to utilize them in order for our game to be seen as credible.
Yes.
But we got to use what we got to use at this stage of the game. And I think they are, they don't have a responsibility to do it. I think they do it because when they know how hard we work. They know how hard they work.
Yes.
They know how hard it is.
That's what they said over and over again.
Yeah, they work is work. Basketball is basketball. What you put into it is just that. And I just think we can't just lean on them to tell our stories and just say how great we are. It is us. Like it is this the gatekeepers of our game. It's the decision makers of our game that have to tell the story in order for us, in order for everybody to just know what's happening out here in our sport, what has happened in our sport. And I just hope this is just the tip of the iceberg as to see, who we are and what we represent.
Absolutely. So to that end, Billie Jean King said, "Everyone thinks women should be thrilled when we get crumbs, and I want women to have the cake, the icing, and the cherry on top too." And so I want to know, what is the cake and the icing and the cherry on top for you? What is your moonshot?
Mine is, it's what our conversation has been about, is investing in women and the entire game. That is, the WNBA players should make more money. They should make more money. It's just, and Brittany Griner's in a situation that she's in because she had to go, supplement what she makes in the WNBA. It's a total investment in marketing. It's a total investment in its people. It's a total investment in, all aspects of the game. Like the WNBA has to, this is the 26th year. And thank God, David Stern, Val Acumen, they had the incredible desire to want our game to be on this platform. Somebody else has to take it to the next level because it's been around for 26 years. In order for us to take it to where it's the levels of the NBA, and I don't think the NBA was as successful in their 26th season as the WNBA. Now, what they've done after 26 years to now is quite incredible. Like, it is a revenue producing sport that everybody can eat. Every single person can eat because of their revenue producing entity.
Everyone, Dawn Staley, let's give her her cake.
Thank you. Oh wow, really a cake. Thank you. Super cool. I have it. You'll hold it? Okay, thank you.